and welcome back. So today we are going to be making our little macrame feather or leaf, whichever you prefer, because it can be either. Before I start, I'll show you my hand. Okay, my hand is swollen. I can't bend my finger. I went to give my project manager, Mr. Mew, a bath. And normally Mr. Mew is very good about this. He gets in there, he freaks out a little bit because of the water, and then he calms down and I bathe him. Yesterday, not so much. He got very upset, so I went to take him out. When I went to take him out, he bit me. And before I could get him out of the tub onto the floor, he bit me more and more. And the bad part is he got me by the bone up here, and he got me in between my fingers. Okay, that's what hurts the most. I've been soaking it, I've been putting stuff on it, but it's just a bit more than painful. It's better today. It didn't hurt quite as bad. I stupidly last night wanted to put some stuff on it, so I kind of wrapped it up, and well, that was not a good idea because it hurt all night and I got very little sleep. So yeah. Anyway, I promised you this video, and we are going to do it. I may be a little slow, so I will do some of it with you and probably do the rest off camera. This time I am using, because I know this can be combed out, I am using, this is needle punch yarn. It is very, very thin. This is really old needle punch yarn, back from before, when it was popular back in, what was it, the mid to late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. I think it was the 80s. I think my kids were both small yet. And I really got into it. And then I just have picked this up at like thrift stores, because it also is great for miniature knitting and crochet, which I also have done with it. One thing about it, it does tend to, it will break easily if you're not careful. This is pretty good yet, but if you're buying the older stuff, some of it's not quite so good. One of my subscribers, thank you very much, suggested using a toothbrush, and I have this one. I will be combing it with that, and I've pretty much come to the conclusion I'm not going to get the look of the real life-sized ones, simply because I am doing this in miniature. But this did work, and I know this stuff can be combed. So thank you very much for that. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but I didn't. So let's get started, and I will attempt to do this the best I can with my other fingers. Now what I've done is I like to leave myself a lot of room. Of course my leaf is not going to be this big, but I like to have a lot of room to work, especially when I'm working in miniature, simply because, you know, it's so small. So I've made it with a loop on top, and I would suggest using a thinner piece of tape, because otherwise you're going to have a really big loop. I'll figure out how to fix that when I'm done. But yeah, but you need to leave a loop on top, and then you need to fold it in half to make your loop, and then bring your two strands of whatever you choose to use on it, bring them straight down so that they are parallel to each other, not crossed over, but you want them straight. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I've cut these, and I've wrapped them around a piece of cardboard that's about 2 inches, so that I'm wrapping around on the 2-inch part. That gives me about a 4-inch piece of this. I found that is more than enough, but again, I like to leave myself extra simply because I am working in miniature. So I am going to go ahead and attempt this. So what you want to do is you want to take this also and fold it in half, make a loop. Then you want to, if you can, stick your loop. My index finger is getting in my way, so we'll just do this the best we can here. I will show you when I get it done, and I realize on a project this tiny that I am going to have my fingers in the way, but I will show you each step. Okay, I like to start down toward the middle because I don't want to work too close to my tape up there. So this is what you have. You have your loop here, and then both of your pieces going out. So as I'm looking at it, the loop is on the left. And you can do it either way. You can start on the right, you can start on the left, whatever's handier for you. Okay, so then you're going to take another piece and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to make a loop, fold it in half, make your loop. Then you're going to take this loop and go through this loop. You're going to go the opposite direction through the loop. And this is not, this needle punch yarn that I'm using it's very fuzzy. And so the fibers are catching on one another. Then you're going to take your two ends on this side and you're going to put them through the loop. So you're going to put those through the loop on that side, and you want to take your loop. You've already got them through the loop on this side because you went like that. So here's what you've got. Basically you've got your knot forming right there. I don't hope you can see it. I'll zoom you in on that knot if I can. So you'll have something that looks like this. So both of the end pieces are going to be through the loops on each side. I hope that makes some sense. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the ends and I'm going to pull the knot and I'm going to push it up. And I'm going to pull it really tight. Now, the one thing I have learned in doing this in miniature is that when you go to comb it out, these can pull out. So I really should have gotten a toothpick, but people, I am not thinking not very well anyway. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue up here so it's out of my way. Just a little bit. And since I don't have a toothpick, I do have a paper clip that I've unbent. And I'm just going to put a little dot of glue right there in the middle of my knot, because I don't want this pulling out when I start combing. And that was a problem that I kept running into, and this to me is going to be the best solution. I'm going to pull it one more time, make sure it's tight, and we'll start again. Piece of your stuff. And it doesn't matter if your ends are perfectly even because we're going to be cutting them anyway. Take a piece of your yarn or whatever you're using. I want to try one out of jute twine, but I can't find it. It's terrible. Make your loop, have your little tails hanging out, and stick it underneath the piece. See, and if I could use my index finger, this would go so much easier. It's really not as hard as it looks at all. It's just getting down kind of a rhythm of threading it through and grabbing those tails. Take a second piece. You want to cut, I think I cut 26 of these. The amount you cut is up to you, depending on how long or short you want your feather. I think I cut 26, but I'm using a very thin cord also. Obviously, you might not want as many if whatever you're using is not so thin. Okay, I've taken my second loop and I've gone through the first loop in the opposite direction. Now I just need to grab my tails, which can be a little tricky. Just being a little tricky. Like I said, once you get a rhythm down, you get used to what you're doing and stuff, this goes pretty quickly. But I've kind of got an issue. So then you just take and pull the tails, pull your knot, push it up, pull it really tight. And it's a little hard for me to pull tight, but we'll do it. And then, like I said, I'm just going to put a dab of glue on there so that my knots don't, what tends to happen is while you're combing, they tend to slip off the ends, or they just tend to pull out. So I'm hoping that little bit of glue there is going to do the trick. I'll do a couple more with you, and then I'm going to go off camera because this is just taking forever for you to watch me. It's the same process all the way to the end. I got the one loop on that side, the tails are on the other side, going underneath. Take my second one, make my loop. Push that loop under that one. move that up a little bit so I don't have such a big loop. Take my tails, push them through and grab them, just like that. And then I'm gonna just pull them down, slide it up, pull it tight. And I am pulling pretty tight. Take my glue, put a little more on there, push it up, make sure it's up there. Same process, and it'll be the same process all the way to the end of your leaf or feather, whichever you choose to call it. Okay. I'm just making my loop with my ends again. Turn it around, poke it through. Sometimes that can be trickier, honestly, than grabbing the tails. So I'll just push it through there. Like I said, this has a lot of, it's very fuzzy fiber, and so it likes to stick to itself. It's not ideal, but it does work better than the polyester stuff I used on the initial leaf. So I'm good with that. Actually, once you get like a rhythm down, or you get this process down, this actually becomes quite fun and relaxing, at least to me. I understand it's fiddly because it's very small things, and I realize that's not for everybody. Now see, I'm ending up with one tail is out and one tail is in. Probably would work much better. I mean, you could use a crochet hook or tweezers, I think, to pull them through. Okay, there we go, we got it. Then we just tie it really tight. I'm not able to pull as tight as I would like to since I can't bend my index finger, but it works. And I want to make sure I get it right up against those other ones. Put a little more glue on there. Kind of gluing them together, sort of. Make sure I don't get my tails in that, because that wouldn't be good. Get a little more glue here. Right now it just kind of looks like a mess, just sticking out like that. Oops. I don't think, even if I put this up to the camera, I don't think you can see how fuzzy this is, but it is a yarn, so it's just a very tiny yarn. But if you're in the thrift stores, be on the lookout for this stuff, because if you crochet or knit, you can do miniature crochet and knitting with this, and it gives you a nice yarn look without having to try to figure out what to do with a bulky full-size piece of yarn. So, okay. Making my loop again. Put it through the other loop. That one got way too big. I'm going to pull it so it's not so huge. Sticking my ends up through. There they are. Okay, I'm just going to pull it up and pull it tight. Make sure it's against my other ones. Throw a little glue on it. There we go. I'm going to do a couple more of these, and my hand is hurting really bad, so I'm going to do these, and then I'm going to do it off camera. It's the trying to do stuff without your index finger is rather painful. Well, this is because I can't bend the damn thing. And honestly, we live in an area, and everybody in this town says that fleas are bad here. And Mimi has fleas, and we just went through that whole big deal about a year ago with him. And so I have been very vigilant on trying to do everything possible, bug bombing my house, but still there are a few that linger. And I don't know if it's because he's a black cat or what the deal is, but he seems to get them worse than my other cats do. And so that was why we were doing the baths, and we were doing one like, oh, every few days, and he has been so good about it. He has just sat, I mean, like I said, he freaked out a little bit when he felt the water, and then he would just calm right down. And yesterday, I don't know what happened, but yeah, it wasn't good. And I know he didn't mean to bite me. You know, it's just he was in a full-blown panic. And thankfully, we are keeping the flea population down. But like I said, there are still some. And I know my neighbors, I have new neighbors that just moved in, and their dog has them. And yeah, this town, or at least this area of town, everybody complains about it. But what can you do? Because short of having your lawn sprayed with insecticides and stuff, which I don't really believe in. Sorry if you get it, do. I don't. Yeah. So yeah, we've been doing pretty good, but they still get them. I have 2 that go outside all the time, and I'm sure that doesn't really help. However, I can't really keep them in. They want to go outside. Mr. Mew doesn't go outside. He doesn't really have any inclination to go outside at all. He's just likes being in, so he doesn't go outside. But nonetheless, the fleas do come in. And yeah. So anyway, that's how this whole big mishap came about. Okay, so I have taken you this far with me, and I am going to do the rest of this off camera, and I'll be back just as soon as I get it done. Bye for now. All right, I think the glue has dried enough now. It's just slightly tacky. Yeah, I figured out that this works a whole lot better if you take something like a paintbrush and stick it under your little fibers, whoops, because then it's not so hard to get the pieces that go across under. Yeah. So I tell you what, guys, my hand is hurting really bad right now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of work with these, and it's very hard in small scale because this yarn is very lightweight. We're going to try to pull it down a little bit so it's starting to look more like a feather or a leaf, and then we'll be cutting it. Try to keep my parts evened out here, or you know what I mean, so that they're not overlapping one another. It probably isn't going to make a huge difference because we are cutting it away, but it would just be nicer if it would just cooperate. So I'm just kind of working it down a little bit so I can get my shape. Now on the one I did before, I tied a knot in these 2 here, thinking it would hold the other pieces on, but it didn't. So that is totally not necessary, and I also think it makes the end of it look a little bit wonky. So next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to try my hardest to do this with you, is to cut the shape I want. So I'm getting it so it's going down pretty well on this side, and I'm going to start from the top. And I am not going to guarantee my cut because I just don't know how well that's going to work. So I'm just going to kind of fold it down. I don't know how big I'm going to want this yet. So I'm going to cut out here a ways, and I'm just going to try to cut it roughly in the shape of a feather or a leaf. Now this one is getting a little bigger than the other one, and I probably should have taken this piece of tape off. And I'm going to try to attempt to cut the other side. I'm giving myself extra room, extra length, because I don't think I'll be wanting it quite this big, but I don't know yet. And I can see already that that cut is way off of the other cut, but we'll fix it if possible. Okay, and you're going to have waste with this, okay? So I'm sure there's probably something that can be done with the excess. I know right now it's probably not looking a whole lot like a feather or a leaf, which it's not, but I need to cut down further. And since my hand is so messed up right now, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go. When I watch them do the full-size ones, they just cut right on whatever surface they're using to get their shape. I'm just going to try working this down just a little bit more. Probably be easier if I didn't have the glue on it already, but given what's happened before, that's how I'm doing it. So I'm going to cut down a little more, leaving my middle just a little bigger, wider than I want my ends. And these big scissors probably are not exactly the ideal thing to do this with, but we'll see. I'm just cutting kind of in a rounded shape. And it's looking like somehow I'm managing to do this pretty even. So, yeah. Oops, I missed that one. Under there, there we go. Okay. And I realize this is not looking like much, but I'm going to take it loose now, and I'm going to hope it doesn't fall apart. Okay, that's off. And I'm going to go back up here to the top, and I'm going to cut this top a little more, just so that it kind of goes out around and comes back in the shape of a leaf. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to try to get it about as even as I can. And there's, when you're doing it this small, it can be quite tricky. Try to cut those ends just a little shorter there. Okay, let's get all this out of here. Clean it up later. Oops, and I missed a few. Because they're not an exact science. But what you need to do is just kind of play around with yours until you're really happy with your shape. I'm trying to see right now, does that look halfway even? It kind of does. So here goes. Let's see if this blue thing works, because I'm going to start brushing this out, and mine is not going to be near as nice and fluffy as the ones that they make in life size. I'm going to hope. I'm holding on to the middle because I really don't want these to, and ideally with the actual macrame cord, they come down and meet in a little point at the bottom. And don't tell me I lost one there, not yet, but it is too long. Just going to nip the end a little bit. And this is honestly probably the most fiddly part of the whole thing, is doing this. You can see I've got another one that's too long. And I may end up cutting these ends down just a little bit more. This is very tricky, trying to comb out something this small. And they are, must not have had enough glue right there. That would be on me, my fault. But I think you can see we're starting to get our feather shape. Glue is not completely dry. Please let your project dry all the way. My project needs to come down here a little bit more. Like I said, it's a bit fiddly, but it's really fun and almost kind of addicting. I'm like, God, can I make them smaller now? You know, and have more than just one big macrame leaf or feather or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it a leaf because to me it looks more like a leaf than it does a feather. Just brush it out, keep working with it until you're happy with the shape and the design you have. I'm going to go ahead and cut these bottom ones just a little more, because I think that's going to add to my shape. And it's not going to be perfect because we're doing something meant to be done in full size in a miniature scale. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think we need to trim just a bit right here. And there we go. I'm going to call that good enough for me. I think it turned out really cute. And I really hope you give this a try. Don't let the small scale intimidate you. You can do this. If I can do it, and I can do it with a mangled hand, pretty much anybody can do this. If you have arthritis, I realize this project is probably going to be a little bit harder for you. But I think, you know, we're all innovative, very creative. I think everybody could probably figure out a way to do this that would work for them. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. That's my little leaf. I hope you liked this. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will be back with the one on the farmhouse, although nothing is going to plan right now on the farmhouse. So just a little spoiler alert, nothing's going right. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with that and my little leaf. Thank you for joining me. I hope you all have a great week. Bye-bye.